The devil thought he could stop me, but he doesn't know how determined of a person I am. You guys, this is my fourth time recording my testimony for you guys. And honestly, I would be lying if I didn't say that I just didn't want to do it again. Um, but you know what? It just all this friction, the sound not working, the recording not working. I guess it just means it's that important for me to get out there. Um, so yeah, this is my testimony. I was thinking like, okay, the last year of my life has changed so much. There's so much I can say about that. Um, but I really was like kind of stuck on like why anybody would want to hear this, to be honest. Um, but the more I thought about it, and I thought further than the last year about, and I would realize that God has been with me my whole life. Like God has had his hand on me my whole life. And I started to remember things that I've buried and I've, forgotten. And it just, the things that have happened in my life, and now that I see it from a different lens, I realized God has saved me so many times, even times when I wasn't talking to him. So here is my testimony, you guys. I'm just going to kind of start at childhood. I'm not going to take you through the whole thing. I'm going to go as fast as I can. But basically, I was brought up in a good Christian home. My parents are devout Christians, but it was a little different because it was a little bit of a toxic situation. They were great people, but together they had their issues, right? And so, kind of growing up in a typical Asian family, there's a stereotype that, Asian families, they're not very, um, how do you put this? Emotionally open. And that was the case for my family. So there wasn't a lot of like, I love yous or hugs or anything like that. Um, so that's what I do remember. And I remember, my parents' relationship being very toxic. And, you know, I am a middle child. So I don't know if it's just a stereotype I played into, but I was definitely the middle child stereotype, very independent, kind of overlooked, a little bit rebellious. And, because of the home dynamics and, um, you know, just having my parents be a little toxic to each other, very toxic to each other, I just was like an avoidant type. So I would just try and avoid the whole mess, right? And do my own thing. But now that I'm the age that they were when, I was young, I realized like, they were just trying to figure things out too. So, I'm never like mad at my parents because I really feel like they really did the best that they could. And, maybe they didn't have the tools that I did. Um, but that was my upbringing. I was brought up in church. I don't ever remember not going. I was always surrounded by churchgoers and everything, all my aunties, everything, right? And that was great. But like I said earlier, I kind of have a little bit of a rebellious streak. I just feel like there's more, And all was normal. And, as I got into my teens, as I kind of, started hanging out with my peers, I got into some groups that weren't, I mean, they weren't the worst, but they certainly were not great. Let's just say that, right? They wanted to, go out and, hang out with boys and like go shoplift at the mall and stuff. And, my parents were like pretty tight on me. So I was like that one in the group that like I was never allowed to do anything, which sucked for me, right? But it also made me like want to do it more. So, I had a friend that, went to my church and she was more of the rebellious type too. And I remember like, because we were both stuck going to church, our parents forced us, we'd be out there skipping our class and like going out and smoking cigarettes behind the church, like, going down that path. And I remember still though, at that age, I think I was around maybe 15, I did make the decision to get baptized. And, I know that it must have been a fight for my soul at that point, to be honest. But I did get baptized. And then, when I got into high school, I just didn't want to go to church anymore, right? It's just I was over it. My parents realized like I was kind of at that age where like they couldn't force me too much anymore. So I remember you guys, first week of high school. I remember this boy came to my school. He didn't even go there. And I remember he was just like, he had his eyes set on me and he would not let anything stand in his way. And I'm talking like he would follow me home, um, literally with his car. And I took the bus, and he would literally follow me home, come to my house, like knock on my windows, like all this stuff, stuff that like I would at 100% be calling the police for now, right? And back in the day, I remember like I didn't really like him, but then he wouldn't give up. Like he would not let up. I'm talking every day. Every day he would show up at school. Every day he would ask me out every day. He would follow me home. And eventually at 15 years old, I was like, is this love? Or I don't know what it was, but maybe it's just I got the attention that I so badly wanted, or, the validation, right? So at 15, I decided, all right, fine. Like, I guess you can be my boyfriend. Like, and that was like my first journey into a relationship or love, right? And so, I mean, obviously when things start off like that, it's a huge red flag and it's not good. Um, and this relationship very, very quickly turned abusive in every sense of the word. So there was obviously um, sexual abuse, there was physical abuse, there was verbal abuse, whatever kind of abuse there was, mental abuse, he was all up in it. And I was only 15. So what did I know then, right? I didn't know anything. I was literally still a child. I have a daughter. She's 9. She'll be turning 10 soon. And that's real close. She's still a kid. She's still a baby. And I like 15 is not very far. So, I know that I just got used to it. I just, the possessiveness, right? It got really, really bad, as you can imagine. The whole like, are you talking to other boys, that kind of thing. But I was already terrified of him. I was already so scared of him. I already, like, at that age, I didn't really have boundaries or a clear cut knowing of who I was. I didn't really have confidence. I was just like going along with it. Okay. And this relationship lasted 4 years. Um, so, throughout every job, everything, he was right there making sure that I didn't do anything wrong. And so that's the way I lived from the time I was 15 to almost 19. It was like really scary at times. And there were times that I remember, um, like he would I remember there was one time where he had picked me up from a job, like my job, and he was accused, or school, I can't remember. And he was accusing me of like talking too friendly to a coworker. And I remember being like, no, like, are you crazy? Like, oh my gosh, but like I was not allowed to have friends. I was not allowed to like smile too hard at anybody. I don't even know if he was just like watching me outside the store or something. But he I remember he made me drive, and I don't even know where I was driving. But he was like interrogating me, and I was like, no, like I didn't do anything. Like this is crazy. And I remember him taking the back of my head and just smashing my face into the steering wheel while I was driving on the highway. And I remember like screaming and crying, and I'm trying not to crash the car. And I remember like looking at people like driving by and being like, help me, like, please. And I thought for sure someone would call the police because I would you not? Um, but no one did. And I remember that day he actually kidnapped me for about 3 days, kept me at a hotel, was telling me, I'm so sorry, like all this stuff, like this crazy stuff back and forth, right? And at that time, I just went along with it. I didn't know what else to say. I couldn't escape. Like he wouldn't sleep. I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't know where I was. Um, and it was like, I knew I couldn't go home anyways because I had all these cuts and bruises all over me all the time. So I just would stay because I didn't want, to go home and people be like, what happened to you, right? So I know that's very, very typical with abuse that you kind of hide it. Um, there's like a name for it, something syndrome, where you feel like you want to protect your attacker or you like fall in love with them, right? Stockholm syndrome, I think it's called. But I for sure had that. But there were just so many instances. That was my everyday life until I got a little bit older. I got into university. Somehow I managed to like keep my grades up. Um, I got into university and, just started meeting new people, and they were just like, that is not it. Like that is not it. And I started realizing that because I was just so tired, like so tired of years of this, right? Where if he didn't like the way I answered, he would smash my cell phone, things like that. I was just so tired. And I remember like having a job and he would call me like hundreds of times at the job to the point where people were like, you need to deal with this because like he can't be disrupting like our office like this, right? It was so embarrassing and I was so, so isolated. And so as I got older, I was kind of just starting to pull away and like getting strength from, other people being like, hey girl, like you gotta go. Um, so that's when I started to kind of try and fight back and try and, step away. And I mean, guys, like I'm condensing this 4 years into like 5 minutes. There was so much cheating, so much trauma, so much like turmoil all the time. Like it was crazy. He had me like underage drinking and partying, like all this stuff too. Like it was just not a good time. It was not a good time, and I was so young. But as I got older, I kind of realized like, hey, like if I don't get away, he will end up killing me for sure. Like I just knew it in my gut. And so I started just kind of getting things to protect myself. I got some pepper spray just in case he like attacked me again, which he did, and I did have to pepper spray him. I've like jumped out of moving cars to get away from this man just for him to come around and find me and come and get me and like punish me. Um, so I remember after one attack, I went to the police station and I said, I don't want to press charges, but I do want to let you know, like, if I die or if I'm murdered, like, this is who did it. But I don't want to press charges because I was so scared, right? I just wanted him to just leave me alone on his own. And he really, like, just was not having it, of course, right? So I remember one morning I let my dog out in the backyard and she was going crazy, like, just freaking out. So I go down there. It's dark out still, and I open the door for her and he rushes in. And I knew, I was like, oh my God, like I'm gonna die. Like I'm gonna die because he rushed in. And so I ran upstairs. I remember my dad was home. He hadn't left the house yet. And I remember like screaming for my dad, and he wedged himself like in between us. And he was like, hey, hey, buddy, like just being like the nicest. And I was like in the back, just like freaking out, like, what are you doing? Why are you talking to him like that? Why are you being so nice to him? My dad turns to me and he's like, shut up, call the cops right now. And so he was kind of holding him off, but so I ran upstairs, called the cops. I was screaming bloody murder because I was like so scared. And when I told them who he was, within like a minute, there was 6 cop cars outside our house, dragged him out of the house. He had like pushed my dad over and everything, like, and they knew who he was. He was a serious, like, habitual offender. He was in a program, like, and I remember the cops talking to my parents afterwards, and he read out the report that I gave him where when I was scared that I would die. And I remember being so mad at the cop, like, why would you do that? Like, why would you expose me like that? And he's like, the reason why we do that is because people that are in abusive relationships won't save themselves. And sometimes this is what we have to do, or you're going to end up dead. And the crazy thing is, like, we never really said anything to each other, me and my parents. It was like, I think they were in shock. I was so embarrassed, and we just really never spoke about it ever again. It's so weird. So, I mean, after that, I did end up putting a restraining order on him, and it never really, he didn't really care. He never respected it. We had to go to court for everything because he kept breaking it, and it's crazy. He never, the justice system it won't really protect you. Um, but eventually I was able to get away. Um, and he actually did end up murdering some people years later. And I truly, oh my gosh, I thank God every day that I was able to get away when I did. Um, so yeah, that was, the beginning of my relationship with men. And really, from that time on, it was always just, it was a lot more of that. Not quite as bad, but it was just, one toxic situation after another. And just so you know, though, I did meet some really, really amazing men um, that were just really good people, but I always would call it off because maybe something in me was like, this is too good to be true. Or I don't know. It if they were good to me, it's like it would repel me. I was so used to the drama, and it was so um weird to me. And so, I each relationship really just wasn't, it was, I've dealt with so much more cheating and all this kind of stuff, and possessiveness. I dated really possessive people. Um and it was just one thing after another. And then, kind of as I got older, I started working in the club industry as well, which you guys is no place for a young girl, to be honest, that, doesn't have very strong self-worth and strong boundaries, which I did not have those things, right? I had just come out of like these relationships and, being taken advantage of. And then now I was in the club scene, which, I mean, gosh, like, what they validate, right? It's like, how do you look? Are you hot? Like, all these things. Can you talk to boys? Like, these are the things that are important in the club industry, right? And that's the life that I went into for the next, gosh, um, decade. Okay. And then also, and that's also when, the drugs and alcohol really started to kick in for me as well, right? So my life was just, at the time, it's like I thought it was so fun, so cool, just because that is what the world thinks is cool. That is what the world glorifies now, right? Can you dress in that like skimpy outfit? Are you drinking? Are you doing drugs? Are you one of the cool kids, right? Um, and I was, but it never really brought me that happiness that I was looking for, that completeness that I was looking for, that validation, right? It's all so surface level. Um, and during this time as well, I started, spokesmodeling. I started traveling a lot to different cities and different and going on tour as a model, as like a club dancer. And again, like not a great place for a girl, and where people really just treasure you for the way you look, the way you move, right? And that just became part of my identity. And guys, when I said like, I always knew the hand of God was on me when I look back, there were so many situations that I could tell you about that I'm like, I should have been killed. I should have been, so many unspeakable things should have happened to me, but God said, no, not her. And I'm lucky, I'm really lucky to have gotten out of that industry unscathed. Well, no, I didn't come out unscathed. Like there was a lot of times I got assaulted, but I mean, I just feel like it definitely should have been worse. I know that there were definitely intentions for me that would have been worse. Like, for example, I remember getting flown out by a photographer one time down to LA, and I remember when he picked me up. And back then, it was so normal for me to, just go to shoots and meet random people and all of this. And like now thinking about it, oh my gosh, like you're a girl that's just traveling by herself to all these random people and random things. Like, oh my goodness. Girl, it's a good thing, it's a good thing my parents didn't know, my goodness. But I remember this one particular, this has actually happened several times, but I remember this one time he picked me up. He was extremely flirty and perverted and just very like touchy. And I remember just because I had no real boundaries, I was just kind of like, "Mm, okay, like, okay, whatever, not being like, ew, get off me, like just really, ugh. Anyways, I remember he was just, trying little moves with me all day. And I was just kind of like, no, no, thank you. Like, I'm good. And I remember him dropping me off at the hotel. And he was like, hey, cool, like I'll see you tomorrow and all this stuff. I was like, okay. And I remember he texted me like, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, like after I had settled down, I was like, oh, I'm just, I'm in the bath, like all good. This literally 2 seconds later, my door opens. He has a key to my hotel room and he's standing there with like intention to do things that are like not great to me. And I remember just looking at him, and then for some reason, he just left and didn't say a thing. And I'm like, I'm telling you, like, God protected me in so many of these kind of instances. There's so many actually, like, that came up that I kind of had buried, but because I was like thinking about my story, I started remembering times like this all the time that happened and times that I did get assaulted. Um, and but it's like I know it could have been so much worse. But anyways, so that went on. Eventually I just was really heavy into the club industry, like really heavy. I was out, 6, 7 nights a week. That became my next identity, the party girl, all of that. At this time I think I was living in Toronto now and, dating the wrong people again. And my life was so dramatic. There was always something going on, and I knew like I just was always searching for something, always knowing that like I was meant for something more, and I just didn't know what it was. Anyways, partying just really got out of hand. 6, 7 nights a week. I was drinking, doing drugs, in bad relationships, and I got hurt really badly. Um, really badly. And that's when I kind of just I got out of Toronto, I left and I moved to Vancouver and started a business and just kind of chilled out for a bit, right? And then I found out I was pregnant with somebody that I just was like not in love with, And obviously, immediately, I stopped partying. I stopped, doing anything really. I was like, what am I going to do? I've never even held a baby before. Like, I always just wanted to be the fun auntie. I didn't want to, I could not really see myself as a mother, because of all the partying and all the things, right? But, and then, of course, finding out that I was having a little girl, of course, really just calmed me right down. And I truly believe, what a gift from God. What a gift because she saved me. She saved me in so many ways. But, my relationship with her father, again, that was something crazy and dramatic. I became a single mom like real quick. And just so you know, I have nothing ill to say of her father at all. Like at all. He's a good dad. But back then there were just some crazy situations. I won't speak of it though, because that's really nobody's business. So now that I had this little baby, I really had to figure out, and I was a single mom, I really had to figure out like, what the heck am I gonna do with my life? Because I had sold my business, and was just really like, okay, I got to figure something out, because I I didn't want to, put her into a daycare. Like back then, daycare in Vancouver was just crazy, it probably still is. And I just didn't want to be away from her. And I started looking for ways to make money and I started an online business that did amazing, um, really, really well. And things were really good, and I loved being a mom. We were like besties and we were just always together. Um, you know, I ended up meeting my second daughter's dad and we ended up having my second daughter. Um, not too long after. Again, I don't think that I ever really fully healed anything from the past. And that I never really had a standard for myself or really looked at like, wow, like I actually want to be with the right person. Again, not saying that my second dad is bad. He's not. He's actually a great dad. But obviously it did not work out and I became a single mom again. Now, during this time, you guys, that I was having kids, my business was doing so well. I was having so much success. It seemed so easy. Everything was just fantastic. And that kind of became my new identity. So it kind of went from, looking for validation in men and relationships to, like partying and my outward looks and like all this kind of stuff. And then it started shifting into money. My ego started becoming like money. How much money can I make, right? Like it was such a great accomplishment for me as a single mom, as like a mother, that I could be doing this. And it just became like all I cared about. It just really became another idol. Um, and so, I had this kind of air about me, I think. I don't think I was like a bad person or anything, but I just think that I had this like recklessness about me because, who cares? Like, I was making money. So I was like, who cares? I was spending it like on everything. I was just like, I had no financial education. I had no idea like how to actually grow my money or invest my money. I was just like throwing it here and there, because in my head, I can always just make more, right? And I just never thought that I couldn't. I never thought that I could fail. And then so, at fast forward years, I was living in Mexico with my two girls, and I remember there was came a time when I kind of realized like, hey, wait a minute, like something's going on with my finances. And I had put some money into investments, like almost six figures worth, and different things. Like I was diversified. And the thing is, I think in 2023, all of a sudden things started to crumble. So investments, I got scammed. Some investments were kind of looking not right. I couldn't get hold of like land developers, like things like that, right? That started happening. And I'm like, what is going on here? And I know that this sounds so privileged, but like I've just never been in a situation where I was like broke, especially with kids. I think when you're younger and you don't have that much money, um, you know, it doesn't really matter as much, right? But when you have kids and you're responsible for them, it's a crazy feeling. So when I started seeing my finances kind of dwindling, work was a little bit slow, I was like, whew, what is happening? I started stressing out a little bit, right? Now, at this time as well, I actually had gone into financial services and I was actually learning so much about, money and investments and all this. And I was like, man, I wish I knew this, like a year ago, even just a year ago before I had made all these bad investments, right? But I had such a passion for financial services because I learned so much. And I remember just like loving it and diving into it and realizing like maybe I need to like start looking at a budget. Maybe I need to just be more financially responsible. And that in came at the perfect time, right? It came at the perfect time when my finances were kind of not stable anymore. And, so I remember like this was about 2023, and I also decided like me and my friend, we decided that we were going to move to a different city in Mexico. So again, packed up, did that, all that. And I remember just feeling really, really weird and unsettled when we got there. Not because, like, oh, it's a new place. Like, that's something that I thrive on. I love exploring new places. I loved all of that. And I loved the city that we were in. It was like beautiful. And, but there was something that was really, really unsettling for me. And I remember just being like, what is it? Like, what can I do? Like, where should I go? Should I go somewhere else? Like all this stuff. And I remember just being like so stressed out because, I have my kids 24/7. So I homeschool and we're traveling on our own. And I remember just being like, what if like the thought came in my head, like just maybe I need to just go back to Canada for a few months, work on my business, just kind of have a little bit of breathing room and, kind of come back after 6 months. So the minute I kind of thought that, I called my dad and I was like, I told him like, hey, I'm thinking of coming back for a few months and just, to work. And he's like, yeah, like you should be, coming back to Canada and stuff. And so I was like, okay. So I remember getting off that phone call with him and being like, all that like weird anxiety and like the unsettledness, it went away completely. I just felt so much peace. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right. And so we packed up again and we went back to Canada. Now, I remember when we landed in Canada, it was like March and there was still snow on the ground. It was still cold. Like I remember landing and just being like, are you serious? This sucks. Like, why am I here? And I remember just having this like anger, just like why do I have to be here? But I reminded myself like, hey, I'm here to work. I'm just gonna like get my business back together again. um and it's fine, it's cold, it's boring here, and that's exactly what I needed, right? So maybe I needed to sit my butt down, stop traveling, and get to work. And so, but again, when I landed in Canada, I just felt unsettled. I was like, okay, what is this? Because I hadn't gotten any progress or anything in the last year, right? Like I felt like I was just kind of fighting to like survive that last year. And so I truly believe, coming to Canada, that was like my wilderness season. And so I remember I was like, something's missing in my life. Like, I am searching for something and I don't know what it is. I don't know what my purpose is. What am I doing here? And I remember talking to like astrologers, life coaches, just all these different kind of people that are supposed to help you in your journey, right? And I remember like after each meeting or each call, I'm like, no. No, that didn't hit. Like nothing hit. And I remember just being so frustrated because I'm like, why am I at this place that I am at right now? Why am I here? Like, from being so high 2 years ago to like being so low and so lost. Like, I was just so lost. And I remember little things started happening. So, for example, I started, like, let's say I was worried about finances. All of a sudden, I would see, like, on Instagram, something about God's got you with that, like, like a Bible verse about, your finances. And I was just like, oh, that's weird. Cause like I never see God on my like on my feed, I've never seen Bible verses on my feed. I was so far from God. I hadn't spoken to God in decades, right? And but it kept coming. And like my dad, he has like a library, a Christian library. He has 100 million Bibles in this house. And I was like, and I remember like reading, grabbing a book off a shelf. And I remember it just being such answers for me, like with what I was asking about my purpose and like what I should do and just like life advice. And I remember just being like, whoa, this is kind of crazy because I hadn't talked to God in so long. And now now verses were just smacking me in the face. Like I would be thinking about something and I would see a Bible verse. And I'm talking like I'm driving on the road and there would be a billboard about what I was thinking about. I was like, okay. There was a time where I was at a playground with my kids. I sat down on the bench and there was a Bible verse on the bench about something I was thinking about. I was like, God, are you there? Hello? I'm like, hey, if you're there, talk to me. Like, what is going on? And when they say God, if you call on him, he will come. He is already there, but he will show himself. Honey, he showed up like to the point where I was starting to freak out a bit because it's like he was speaking to me through anything and everything he could. And so finally I started talking to him again and I started asking him like, "Hey, are you here? Like, Lord, what do I do?" And I remember just having this calling to just go to church, go to church. And so I, asked a few people, a lot of people recommended this one church. I ended up going and I remember walking in and just feeling this peace I haven't felt for so long, just in survival for so long. And I just felt this peace and I was like, oh my gosh. So I was like, okay, like, and I remember, I think it was like the first or second week that I was there. I remember the pastor was talking about like finding your purpose. And I was like, no way. I was just like, no way. Because like, this is what I came here for. And it was just wild. It was wild. And I truly believe that like God brought me back to Canada because I was too busy out there. When I was out traveling, I couldn't hear him. I was so busy doing my own thing. And when I came back here, it was so quiet and there was nothing to do. And a lot of my friends that I had called and been like, hey, how are you? Like, let's meet. They didn't reply back. God just removed everything, every distraction, everything from me so that he could be like, hey, I've been trying to reach you. You need to sit down because I've been trying to talk to you. And I came home. I came home. And from there, I was like, God, like, you pruned so many friends from my life, which now I'm very thankful for because I have so much more peace, to be honest. But at the time, it kind of felt really lonely. I remember praying for just, I said, Lord, like, please send me a community. Like, I just want people around me that understand, that are going through the same journey. And I kid you not, I don't know what it was. That day, I had several women reach out and just tell me, like, hey, I'm so glad you're on this journey. And just really encouraging me to really keep exploring my relationship with God. And I remember you guys, I remember telling God, like, I'm just lonely. When you're in your wilderness season, a lot of times you're by yourself because there's a lot of things that God is doing in you. There's a lot of work that God is doing in you, right? Breaking down your ego, softening your heart, just building your character. And sometimes other people can't come with you. And I remember just being like, I miss having a best friend. I'm just lonely, and I was okay, just having me and God and my kids, but it gets lonely. And I remember getting this text message and it said, this is from my childhood best friend. We had been friends since like grade school, elementary, like we were little. And she was my first best friend. And obviously we lost touch throughout the years. I hadn't talked to her in like decades, I swear, maybe at least a decade for sure. And like even before then, it was never regular. It was like maybe once every few years, and I got this text from her saying, hey, is this still your number? And I was like, hey, hi. And she was just like, hey, awesome. You should come over like on the weekend. And I was like, keep in mind, I have not talked to this woman for over a decade and a half, maybe. And even before then, it was like years and years. Like we had not talked or seen each other at all. Okay. So this was out of the blue. And I'm like, okay. And like I said, I wasn't doing anything. I had no plans, no friends. And so I was like, all right. We had kids that's kind of the same age too. So I was like, okay, like sure, I guess. And so I remember being so nervous because I'm like, I wonder why she messaged me, like what is up? And I went anyways. And I remember it was like our kids ended up getting along so well. They're besties now. And I remember just talking to her like we had never stopped talking. And I remember like mentioning church and just that, like, I just started going back to church, like just started, like maybe a month in or a few weeks. And she was like, I know Jesus. And you guys, this woman has become like such a blessing, like such a great leader for me. Someone who's just opened up her home for me and my family, that has just been so gracious and loving and like she's been the greatest mentor for me in this journey. How weird is that? Like I don't even know what possessed her to message me that day. Maybe it was God. It was God. But how cool is that? He listens. He listens to you. He knows exactly what you need. But I want to just point this out how intentional God is. That when He put us together when we were kids in elementary school and we lost touch this whole time, to put us back together at a time like this, at a time where I needed her. And she's just been like such a light in my life, not just my life, but my kids as well. So I'm so thankful for her. Like I'm so thankful for her, and like she really is God's gift. And like how intentional is that? That God knew to put us together at the age of whatever it was. We were like 7, I don't know. Cool, right? But wait, there's so much more. Okay. I remember this was like in August, I think it was, and then by September, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so good. I'm so healed. I'm ready to be back on the road," right? Because again, I'm like, this is a whole plan. Like, I gotta go. Work was okay. It wasn't like super busy, but it was steady. I worked online, so it's like, okay. Um, you know, got my friend back. Like, it was so cool. I found Jesus. Like, I just was like on a roll. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to get out of here. September 14th, I booked my one-way ticket out of Canada. And September 17th, my dad had a massive heart attack and stroke. And my world just stopped. It was something that I just never, selfishly, never saw coming or was thinking that would happen, right? And I remember the doctor called me. He's like, "You need to gather the family because he's not gonna make it till tomorrow. Like he's not making it till tomorrow." I remember like seeing my dad and just feeling so much regret of just not talking to him more, not spending more time with him because I was just so busy with my own life. I would stop in, be like, "Hey, what's up?" In and out, right? Never really like talk to him, never listen to him, just always in my own world since I was a teenager, right? I never really spent the time with him because when I was a teenager, he was my age, like just working, trying to make a living, kind of doing his own thing. I was doing my own thing. And so I never grew up with him. He always just kind of like, I always thought my dad didn't care. And it wasn't that he didn't care. It was that he knew that there was no, either he could try and control me and I would run away, or he could just let me and then always just keep that door open for me to come home, right? That was my dad. He's just like so gracious. But I remember like seeing him just like hooked up like that and swollen and just it was like it was so scary and I just had so much regret. And he made it. God is good. God is so good. He made it. He was in the hospital for quite a long time. He had to relearn how to like walk and everything and get his strength back because it took a toll. He had several heart attacks actually while he was in the hospital. Luckily, there was no brain damage. He made it. I didn't go anywhere and I made a promise like I wasn't going to go anywhere because I didn't know how much time I had left with him and I was like, remember how I said like I don't know why I had to be back in Canada? Because imagine he was by himself and I was out in Mexico somewhere and I couldn't get there in time. God is so intentional. He knew that I had to be here. So my dad came home and obviously I wasn't going to go anywhere long without him. I just was like so worried about him and he's so independent. He's like wants to like go and shovel snow by himself and I'm like I can't I can't let you do that. So when he came home it was just a lot of healing and when I say it's just such a miracle because he was out doing his own thing like so quickly after he came home. Thank God. And but I have this just never ending worry about him now, right? Every time he's gone for too long or he goes for a walk. Yeah. But during this time, my dad was in the hospital. Everything halted in my business, right? I just didn't care about anything else. I was at the hospital every day, just I just did not have a mind for work. And my business completely halted. I was still dabbling, but like the money coming in was actually like very slow. And I was like, okay, I gotta start, I gotta get this back because like, okay, my dad's home now, like let's get this together. And I've never had a time where like there was no business. And it was extremely scary for me. I have two kids. I'm a single mom. And, I had a few other streams of income at this time and they were slowly drying up. And so I'm like, what is going on? And this just forced me to again, really learn how to steward what I did have, right? Really be real financially responsible, financially smart and frugal. That was hard, but I knew like, hey, you don't really have a choice. Like, you really don't have a choice. And I remember at this time, like, I'm praying to God and I know all the things, right? I know all the things like He will provide. You got to trust Him to provide. And all that time, because I was so deeply woven into my identity and my validation, like that I need to make money. Like, I need to hustle more. I need to do this. I need to start another business. Like, I was completely fighting to control the situation. And I remember just he kept taking things, not to him taking things away, but it's like situations would happen where I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I can't control this. I can't make this happen. It's not working. Like everything I would try would just stop. And I remember just being so stressed out, and I had never been so stressed out in my life or had anxiety like this. And I remember just one day I just cried out to him and I said, Lord, like, please, I can't do this anymore. I'm giving it to you. I am surrendering. I am surrendering because all this time I knew that to fully surrender is to fully have faith in God, that He will provide for you. But we are so wired to be like, I have to be the one. I have to be the one. I have to, do this, especially how deeply rooted like money was in my whole identity, right? And so that was a huge ego death for me. And I remember that day, that night that I cried out to Him. I never had that bad of anxiety in my life. And I remember after I prayed that and I cried for help, immediately it was gone. And I went to bed that night. And I remember waking up the next day and feeling so light and so okay and so not worried. Even though, like, for the first time in my life, I had nothing coming in. And, like, I'm just living off savings at this point, right? And I remember still tithing, even though I had nothing coming in. But I just had faith. I just had faith. And this time in my life was so character building because I had to really have an ego death and just believe. And can I tell you something? When I fully actually surrendered and was like, okay, it's yours. Now, I remember every single one of my income streams, I had like five or six previously. Every single one was at a zero. Like there was paperwork that I needed, all this stuff was just like at a zero. And it was, I almost laughed because I'm like, okay, I trust you. Like I have no choice. I'm not stressed. I won't stress out. And the minute I really started having faith and I really started believing in Him, things started happening. So, for example, and tons of these things happen, okay? Tons. Because for 6 months, um, I think the 6 months, 5 or 6 months, like I did not have anything coming in. And tell me how I was able to survive and feed my kids. So I'm telling you crazy things like I got a letter in the mail saying that, I had funds in a job that I worked like 20 years ago. I had left a bunch of money in their employee savings account. And Miraculously, they just needed to send me a check for that. From a job that I worked at 20, maybe 20 years, like 15, 20 years ago. What? Um, One time I went to, you know, I was dropping off something, and I used to sell vitamins, and I was dropping some off to somebody. And it was like around Chinese New Year's, and she gave me a little red envelope. I was like, oh, cute, like, thinking it's $5 or like a loonie, like something small, right? Just like something cute. And I remember getting home and it's hundreds of dollars. And I called her and I said, like, I think you gave me the wrong envelope. I don't think this was meant for me. I can come bring it back. She said, no, this is for you. And I said, why? Like, she has no reason to do that. And she's like, it's for you. Please keep it. And I remember being like, I remember looking, I'm just like, God, really? That way, like, when I tell you, he will make a way for you. You do not need to know how or when, but he will make a way. And he did for months. And all he wanted me to do was to build my faith. All he wanted me to do was to experience him working in my life so that I could come and tell you. You guys, it continued on like this. There were so many instances where, oh, just, found an old account with some money in it, like all this. It was crazy. It was crazy. And remember that six figures that I lost in 2023 in like all these different things. You know, God is a redeemer and he redeemed it. He redeemed me. That six figures came back. It's like, you guys, when you have faith in God, your life, it's not always going to be easy, but it's going to be peaceful. And you're going to have joy and peace that make no sense. Because there was no reason that I should have peace or joy in the world's view, right? In the world's view, like, girl, you should be stressing out and you should have anxiety. And I did until I gave it to God. So now at this time, I'm like, God, I still, like, I need to work. Like, I need to figure out something. Like, am I going to be here forever? And, I don't even, I didn't want to stay here forever. But guess what? If I'm here, that means my dad is here. So I have nothing to complain about. But I was praying, Lord, like, I need to work. I want to work. What is my purpose? Where is my next step? And I remember my friend bringing me a business opportunity, and I was like, no. I just didn't have faith in myself anymore. And I remember just really praying on it and being like, I think God is telling me to go for it, but I was just very scared to step. I was very scared to just go ahead with it because I felt like, wow, everything that I've tried on my own was not working, right? It was not working. So I was just scared, but I was like, okay, I'm gonna try it out. And I did. I remember that there was kind of like in the beginning of it, there was this convention that they had, and I remember, and it was in Vancouver, and I remember my friend saying like, you should really come, and I was like, nah, I don't know, like I don't really know if I wanted to go all in or anything, and I remember like I kept thinking about it though, and it was weird because usually I wouldn't think about things like that. Um, but I remember I could not get it off my mind. And so I was praying and I said, Lord, like, I don't know if it's just FOMO. I don't want to just FOMO in and anything. And like, finances weren't like the best yet. Um, and I remember praying like, Lord, if you want me to go to this, please just make it so crystal clear that I cannot deny it. Like, I just like at this point, I was like scared that I would miss some like an instruction or like, I didn't want to like go against what God's plan was, but I just wanted to be sure, like, is this your plan, Because, I'm still a newbie. And I remember praying that prayer. Be like, Lord, make it so crystal clear that I can't, I won't mistake it for anything. And so I remember I said that prayer. That was Wednesday night. And I remember the VP of the company messaged me and said, Hey, Steph, I think you should come to this. And I had never met him before, but he said, I think you should come to this. I'm gonna fly you in and I'm gonna get your ticket to the convention. And I was like, whoa, what? And I messaged him back and I was like, no, I have my kids. Like I don't travel with my kids all the time anyways, right? But it was like my first reaction. I was like, nope, I got my kids, sorry. I remember kind of being bummed out because I'm like, oh, that would have been fun, And I went to bed that night. The next morning, in the mornings, I always, get ready. I pick a YouTube video, whatever's first kind of thing, and just get ready for the day. And I remember the video I clicked on that morning was a girl talking about when you know what God wants you to do and you still disobey, and the story about, Jonah getting swallowed up by the whale. And I remember I remember like hearing it and just laughing, and I stopped everything, and I messaged him back and I said, I'm gonna come. I'm gonna come. And I got on that flight, girl. I got on that flight, and I remember being like so nervous because I'm just like, oh my gosh, like what am I doing here? I haven't like been around people for so long. And I remember walking in, and it was the best thing. It was the best thing. And I knew that God sent me there. I knew they were all the people that I had prayed for, the community that I had prayed for. And they were all just God-led. I remember, there were some speakers that were speaking that had Bible verses on the screen, and I was just like, this is me the whole weekend, just like in awe, just so grateful. And I had this fire in me, and God was like, see, like, you belong here. I want you to do this, and I want you to go all in. And I remember being like, okay. And I remember just coming back with a fire in my belly. And God started blessing me so much, not just financially, because He did that too, financially, with community, with purpose, just because I listened. And I'm telling you, like, the miracles I can tell you that He's worked through me, through this company for me. I'm talking like deadlines that there's no way. There's no way. Like I'd wake up that day and be like, there's no way. But hey, God, if you want to make it happen, and He did. He did. There was he gives me signs everywhere. Sometimes I think like, hey God, like this is it, right? Like I'm on the right path, and He will give me a sign. He is so good. He is so good. There's so much that I have to tell you about this last year and all the things that I've learned, since walking with God. I've walked with God and I've walked without God. And I can tell you that walking with God is like you in another dimension. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful, peaceful, joyous life. And I'm going to share more about that with you. I don't want to make this too long because it's already very, very long, I'm aware. So this is just an intro. This is my testimony. But I want to tell you all the things that God has done and all the things that He's taught me and how He's really redeemed me. Because our God, He is a redeemer. And anything that, was used for evil, He can redeem for good and make beautiful. And I'm glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. And if there's anything else that you want to ask me, ask away. You can message me on social media. You can comment down below. But this is just the intro. This is me. This is me. This is me. And, this is my purpose. And yeah, I will be dropping more episodes like this and just the lessons that He's taught me, this year and continuously because I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly becoming a different person. And I'm so thankful that you're on this journey with me. Take care.